Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March 27th, 2025 meeting of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. I'm Katie Sieben. We have two other commissioners here for our agenda meeting today. I'll take the roll. Commissioner Partridge.
Here.
Commissioner Tuma.
It's like we're back in pandemic times, you know.
I know.
We're separated here. I'm here.
Yes, so we can take our votes by voice vote because there are just three of us and we're all in person. We have 3 items on our agenda for today, and please introduce our first item. Ms. Brown-Huss.
Good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Item number 1 is docket E002, E011, E017, E015, /CI 24-200 in the matter of impacts of the capacity definition in Minnesota statute, section 216.164, and associated rules on net metering eligibility for rate-regulated utilities. The question before the Commission is, should the Commission reconsider its January 23rd, 2025 order, which delegated authority to the Executive Secretary to open a new rulemaking proceeding to clarify that capacity, as defined under Minnesota statute section 216B.164, subsection 2AC, for the purposes of eligibility for net metering in Minnesota statute section 216B.164, subsection 3D, is determined by and measured at the qualifying facility's inverter or a power control system or supplemental device that controls production at the qualifying facility before the net metered customer's load. I have no further remarks, but I'm available for questions. Thank you.
That was a mouthful, but thank you very much. Commissioners, we don't need oral argument on this, obviously, because it's a petition for reconsideration, but are there any questions? Commissioner Tuma, would you make a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I am convinced that we have a robust record and we made the order. Doesn't need to be vacated at all. So, and I know some of this will be addressed in some rulemaking down the road. So, Madam Chair, I think we could do decision option 3, deny.
I support that, to deny the petitioner's request for reconsideration of the January 23rd, 2025 order. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of Commissioner Tuma's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. Thank you very much to all the parties. Ms. McShane, when you're ready, please introduce item number 2.
Good morning, Chair Sieben and Commissioners. Item number 2 is docket number G008/C24191 in the matter of the consumer appeal of customer complaint 82340. The questions before the Commission today are: 1, should the Commission grant the complainant's request to require Centerpoint to make adjustments to the complainant's individual account? 2, should the Commission require Centerpoint to bill customers for utility service and for unregulated products and services separately? 3, if combined billing is allowed, should the Commission require Centerpoint to modify its default order of allocating customer payments between charges for utility service and charges for unregulated business to prioritize all charges for utility service over any unregulated products or services? And 4, should the Commission require Centerpoint to make changes to its customer bills website, and other communications to clarify the distinction between its regulated and unregulated offerings and to clarify its practices relating to disconnection, payment agreements, and billing. There were multiple late filings to the record after the briefing papers were filed. Last Wednesday, March 19th, the department filed late comments. On Monday, March 24th, an ex parte report of communication between commission staff and the complainant was filed. On this Tuesday, the 25th, Chair Sieben filed a new decision option 29. And yesterday afternoon, Centerpoint filed a joint letter with all the other parties in the docket with their preferred decision options. All these materials were filed to the docket and have been provided to commissioners. Hard copies are available at the side of the room, and staff are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. McShane. First, I'd just like to point out, and this was covered well in the briefing papers by Ms. McShane and Ms. Moe, but this is the first consumer appeal to be heard by the commission under the new consumer appeal statute. And I just wanted to start off by thanking the parties that worked on that, changing that legislation. I think this is an example of a good process for us to now be able to follow. The complainant, to remind commissioners, her name and identifying information are private under the Minnesota Data Practices Act. So we are going to not refer to her by name in the agenda meeting, but certainly we thank her for bringing this concern to our Consumer Affairs Office and working with them and with parties, mainly our staff, I should say, to help work through this issue. So we thank the complainant, if she's listening, for her engaging in a process that certainly not like easy for someone to understand. So why don't the parties come forward, and we'll start with identifying names, and then we'll move. I think probably we appreciate, or at least I appreciate, that there was some, seems to be like convalescence of positions here. It's always a little tricky when it comes late, but that's the way it goes, I guess, sometimes. So, starting on my right, please state your name for the record and the organization you're representing.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Jason Luce, Associate General Counsel with Centerpoint Energy.
Sydney Lieb with the Minnesota Department of Commerce.
Good morning, Joey Cherney with the Office of the Attorney General Residential Utilities Division.
Good morning, Olivia Carroll with the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota.
Great, thank you. I'll start with just like who would like to address the overall late filed decision option and the agreement that the parties came to. I don't know. I'm happy to do that. Okay, yeah, please go ahead, and could you just give like a general sense of what the agreement is and how you think it will help your customers in the future?
Thank you. Well, first of all, is the mic working okay?
I don't know. I can hear you, but the camera isn't going to it. Just if, I know you haven't been in front of the commission a lot, but so many of the people in the room might know this, but we're getting all new like AV system, but not until the spring. And so in the meantime, our microphones, there's nothing we can do except complain about them. And
I can speak loudly. The blue light is on. Yeah.
But if your mic isn't getting picked up, the people online can't hear. So I don't know if it.
Test.
It's not
Testing.
working. Maybe just scoot down a seat and try those others.
How about this one? Is this one better?
I'm waiting for the. Can you guys hear in the back? Yes? Okay, let's try that. Even though I don't know why the camera isn't going to you. But asking me to help with technology is like the last thing anybody wants to do, so.
Good to go? All right, well, thank you. Well, first of all, I do want to thank all the interveners and parties and staff who have participated in discussing these issues. It was a useful process, and I think we made some great progress in resolving both the issues for this particular complainant and also address some other broader issues that were brought to light through the complaint. So let me address the agreement in two pieces. One, first regarding the particulars of the complainant situation. So in our submittal, we identified the changes that we made to the account to address the proper application of her payment, the removal of late fees and other charges, and sort of the reconciliation of the account to the current status that it's in, which is she's current. There's no gas arrears. Service is in place, and so we feel like we've rectified and addressed those issues. I believe the commission staff comments concur with that. The interveners do not take a position as part of the settlement, but on that score, we think we have resolved the matter to the satisfaction of the complainant.
Madam Chair, along that lines, I'm assuming you're going to move to the agreed upon part, so I'll just try and address it here. From a regulated service purpose, she's not in arrears. She's getting her regulated gas. She's not in a shut-off mode at this stage. And so I got that. That sounds good. Okay. I'm sure for her, the confusion has been, I don't know if she's still, I don't want to use the word arrears, but behind or have issues with her service report, which is none of our business, but I since we're here, I just want to know, has that been resolved? Does she feel like she is now whole as far as everything, and so we can focus on, she can focus on keep paying her bills, or is there still issues with the other service? Now, understanding it's none of my business, but it's helpful to know our customers are being taken care of.
Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, I can answer that. I just looked into that, and the late filed comment from the customer made us think she still has some confusion over it. It's not the service; it was an appliance that was purchased. We intend to reach out to her again. She's the customer has not been wanting to contact us during this, and staff has, because of ex parte rules, has not wanted to intervene. So my thought is, as soon as this proceeding is over, I'll reach out to Ms. Tom or someone else and see if they can't help set up a meeting with her, with the customer, and we can walk through whatever issues might be remaining on the unregulated side.
And I'm assuming, and I can see her behind you, I'm assuming Tom, even though it's not a regulated service, will be more than happy to try to make those connections and get her, and she's nodding yes. And so I appreciate her willingness to continue to help this person out, even though it's outside of our realm. So I appreciate that.
Did you want to?
Turning to the broader issues, so I think the main issue that was being discussed was the allocation of payments between regulated and non-regulated services and between current and arrears. And we had laid out in our papers the hierarchy for application of payments. I think there was a general consensus that that allocation of payments is not presently specifically regulated. But there was discussion about different means to resolve concerns that people had about primarily payments going to non-regulated services or purchase of appliances before gas service. And there were really two concepts that were being discussed, and I think we've adopted the broader one that's probably the cleanest, which is to have separate billing. So currently, gas and non-regulated services come to customers on one bill and one account. And so the proposal and the agreement is that Centerpoint will move towards separate billing. So you get an HSP bill or an appliance bill that would be separate from your gas bill. And then customers will have more clarity in terms of how they make their payments, what their bills are. And I think the general view is that that will eliminate confusion about how payments are applied, and will also eliminate confusion about whether or not someone could be disconnected for a delinquency, say, in a non-regulated account. So along with the separation of billing, then there are agreements as to various notices that will be provided on the bills, notices that will be provided regarding the process of transitioning, because this, although we are addressing a situation that involves a very small number of customers, in other words, customers who have gas, appliance, and HSP service and are delinquent. I mean, that's literally a handful of customers. But the solution is going to involve, the 160,000 customers, I think, that have both regulated and non-regulated service, which is necessary because this is not just going to impact people who have these HSP and appliance services, but it's going to impact people who have estimated and budget billing because of how gas billing is deferred under an estimated billing or a budget billing plan. The cleanest and simplest way to deal with all of that is to move towards the separate billing. So we've adopted the decision items that go to the process for doing that, the collaboration in terms of notices, and also the training piece that was raised by the Commission yesterday is part of the agreed settlement terms that are all summarized in the letter that you received yesterday.
Thank you. I know there are questions, but did you want to start, Commissioner Partridge?
Yeah, thanks, Chair Steven.
You need, your mic is off.
Thank you, Chair Steven. I just wanted to follow up on the budget billing. Why and how will separating the HSP bill from the regulated bill affect budget billing? Can you explain that?
Right. So currently, say in the winter months, there is a budget billing, but necessarily defers part of the bill, right? The gas portion of the bill. So a customer that has a budget bill is going to have essentially three parts of the bill. There would be the budget amount that there is considered a currently payable bill. There will be the deferred amount that you're presumably catch up on in the summer. And then there may be the non-regulated charges. Mm-hmm. And so if we get into changing the billing hierarchy, the customers who have those deferred gas charges desire to have those deferred. Sure. They don't want to have HSP payments transferred from HSP to cover the deferred amount because they're getting the benefit of the deferral. Separate billing is going to avoid confusion and problems with the budget billing situation.
Excellent. I understand now. You're saying separate billing will avoid that problem. Correct. That would have been created by, instead of separating, doing a set hierarchy.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. That is clarified. I have some general comments. I don't know if you have some clarifying questions.
Yeah, there are more comments, but go ahead.
Sure. Okay. General comments are that this was a really unacceptable situation in my mind, and that it was very frustrating that the company was not working more closely with CAO and the customer initially. I think in our briefing papers, there appears to be a significant amount of resistance on the company's side from making this right for the customer up front. And I am very disappointed and frustrated that that was the case. So Centerpoint needs to do better. This customer is still confused, and I appreciate that Mr. Lewis has said that you will be working with the customer. I understand the ex parte situation after this complaint came to us, and I really thank Ms. Tome for being a trusted liaison with the complainant and the company. And I appreciate you and your willingness to continue to do that, because I think rightfully so, there is no trust between the complainant and the company today. So I just want to put that out there, that this person was clearly confused, is still confused, and required some hand-holding, some one-on-one education and awareness about what products she had signed up for, what they were, what she needed, what she didn't need, and simply moving to disconnect her was an unacceptable thing to do. So I don't know how to regulate that, but I really expect the company to work with CAO in a more cooperative way and to treat their customers better than this woman was treated. And I apologize if she is listening to the complainant for what happened under our watch, for the role that regulators, were not able to play up front for her. She never should have been disconnected in my mind. She probably never should have been charged for some of the various services she thought she needed. And so that is something that I think the OAG can continue to perhaps work on. CAO will continue to work on that, and I just wanted to make that very clear. I was really happy to see the settlement, if you would call it that, the joint decision options that were proposed yesterday. They were very similar to what I had planned to offer today. I think I just thank you all for working together, be it a little late, but that's what happens, and I just appreciate you doing that. I do have some additional ideas on top of what you all have proposed that I think would be helpful. I think Ms. McShane or Ms. Moe, someone might have those to share. We've just a couple additional thoughts. I'm not sure. Yeah, that'd be great. Got these up today. Oh, actually the ones that I had put together. Okay, and Kate, okay, great. Thank you. I'll pass these over. Okay. We will get these to you both, but there's just a couple modifications and then a couple additions that I would propose on top of what the parties had proposed.
Madam Chair, as they're being handed out, Commissioner Partridge, I appreciate someone else coming up with decision options. So you're warming my heart, so you don't need to apologize one bit.
And I just, bear with me because
Joy, I will.
all these decision options were important to have in there, and it was very well organized, and yet I still have like color-coded notes and things that may make me, I may need to get some help on some of these. But, okay, the first is, that I want to talk through is number 3, the parties proposed adopting decision option number 3, A and B, I believe. Where are we? Yeah.
Just to make sure we're working off the same thing, it says in the, what I'm looking at, the joint parties support 3, 3A, 3B, and 3C. So
Got it. Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. Okay. So my proposal would be actually to strengthen 3C. So 3C says that if the bills are put into the same envelope, one would need, the regulated would need to be on top. I would propose that these things need to be fully separate and separately branded so that there are not HSP bills in your regulated gas bills. These are separate companies, separate services, and I do not think that they need to be in the same envelope. I think it will increase the likelihood that someone will accidentally throw one away. And I'd like...
or be confused about what
Which
bill they're
one?
supposed to pay.
Right. And especially because we're separating them out, could be confusion. Is this already in this one? Why is, I just think these need to be separate services. I want my HSP contract, that is separate. I want my gas bill, that is separate. Those are two different things. So I would like the parties to, I guess,
Could we have,
remark on
Ms.
that.
Kaler, could you put Commissioner Partridge's alternative 3C on the screen? Because, well, maybe you all have it, but we're just all seeing it for the first time, so.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I don't know if, no, it's okay. I don't know if anyone's ready to comment or you want to think about it before.
Sure.
Centerpoint, did you want to, it looks like you're ready.
My initial reaction is just one factor that the commissions should consider is the cost aspect. So right now, the mailing costs of these bills are allocated between non-regulated and regulated. So basically half of the cost of these bills that go for gas are being offset by the non-regulated business. So if you do have separate bills, then it's going to be an increased cost to ratepayers.
Okay.
I mean, of separate mailings, I should say.
But if you're not, would that be for just the customers who have HSP service, or the costs for all of your regulated gas customers would go up, you're saying, because HSP is no longer subsidizing the mailing?
I think that latter statement sounds accurate to me. I mean, we're just seeing this and reacting to it sort of off the cuff. But it seems like we could get you, if you're going to consider this, we could get you some fuller data in terms of what the cost impact would be of this change.
Do you know about what percentage of your customers get paper bills versus electronic? Not just HSP customers, but
We've got some people here that may have
just a rough number, because
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And maybe if it's okay with you, Chair Steben, I can run through the others, if decision options, and then folks can talk about them and prepare their response.
Or just take a short break.
and we could take a break.
Yeah. And then on, my next one was on decision option 14. This is the requirement that Centerpoint would provide a notice in their first bill of the changes to billing. And this is just to expand upon that, to require in the month prior to any changes being made, that there is a notice that gives people, a heads up. Hey, next time you get your bill, it's going to look different. Then in the next, and I just picked a number, I think here, 3 monthly bills, there would continue to be that notice. I just think it would be helpful for customers, especially if there's multiple people in the household paying bills, for that to be kind of a reminder for multiple months so that people don't miss it, especially since we're separating the bills out. We want people to be reminded, hey, I got to pay this other bill too. And then hopefully after 3 months, it becomes, they're more automatic for them.
And Commissioner Partridge, I understand this would only apply to customers who are HSP and Centerpoint customers. Like, it's not obviously going to everyone, because if they don't have HSP, they're not going to see a change, correct?
Correct. I think that's right.
And that's why when they said it was like, it would be half the cost going up, because not everybody's getting these bills.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious how that's divided. One option too, Commissioner Partridge, on this, I like all these ideas, and I was looking at your 30, so I didn't want to jump. I was already jumping ahead. My apology. But if we could build in maybe a thought around, and so I'm throwing this out for the break when they're talking, to create almost like a negative checkoff of having a compliance filing, how they're going to do it.
You're confusing me. Can we just talk about 14 and then wait till she explains 30? Because I'm still on 14.
Then I'll talk about that.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Is that, unless they tie together in ways I don't get.
Yeah, they do, but I'm not explaining it well. By the time I get there, it's probably better that Mr. Partridge explain her decision options than I do.
Okay. So Centerpoint, did you want to react at all now to 14?
Our initial reaction is that doesn't look like it should be a problem.
Okay.
Okay, great.
See the value of it.
And
Excellent.
then Commissioner Partridge, and if we could put 30 on the screen, and then you could tell us what it is doing.
Yes, okay. And then after that, Commissioner Tuma, I have one thought on a negative checkoff, but since I don't know what you're talking about, I should probably wait on that. And then the new 30 is just to say that the cost of separating the bills out is not recoverable from ratepayers, because the fact that these were combined, in my opinion, they shouldn't have been combined in the first place. This is an unregulated business that the company makes money off of, and that side of the business should foot the bill for any cost to upgrade the billing system to separate those out. And so that is just to make that clear through decision option 30 that we want those costs to be separated out, and those are for the unregulated business to pay for and not ratepayers. And so those are the three. And then just a quick side note, Commissioner Tuma, there's sort of a negative checkoff option on decision option 15 that I think is just more about here's what the bills will look like. I don't know if that would meet your needs. I was considering that as a good option, and I think it's the only difference I think we could, or improvement maybe we could make in it, is that we could make it a little quicker, you know, like a 10-day negative checkoff instead of a 60-day, because it's to trigger a comment period, and then maybe the comment period could also be shortened, just so we're not dragging this out unnecessarily.
Thank you. I forgot about 15. I think it'd be smart to incorporate that in, because I would like them to do a compliance filing. Let us know what is going to be the cost to, you know,
Sure.
the regulated cost to ratepayers on that. They can't recover till their next rate case, but still it's going to be a cost that's hanging out there. And then it gives the parties a chance to look at it, the department and being the garter of the accounts can say, oh, yeah, this is too much. It needs to come back to commission. We need to relook at this. But I generally like where it's going. It'd be just nice to know what those costs are and break them up. So
Wait, sorry, I'm lost still. You're talking about decision option 15, which I thought was a sample bill.
Yeah.
we'd have to revise it. We're talking
Just about the second
principle
part.
of having a compliance filing on all this, and then let us know what their plan is on the transition, how long it's going to take. That's what I would like to know, and then in costs
And then have a compliance filing to show that the costs between regulated and unregulated are divided. And
our accountant people are checking that and confirming it does.
that's helpful, thank you. To Commissioner, or to, excuse me, to Centerpoint, can you explain, like, your reaction to both of these decision option, or your position on them? And then also just like a very high level, your unregulated business, the HSP, those costs are like jurisdictionally allocated across all of your, like if you call a call center, you talk to someone about your HSP service. I assume in the rate case, there is a schedule that shows how that time that your call service agent was using to talk about your HSP service, those costs are all accounted for in your regulated side of the business in your rate cases. Mr. Luce is nodding his head, but can you just like give a high level overview of how the company indeed does segregate the costs between HSP and normal Centerpoint business or regulated Centerpoint?
Chair, Commissioners, yeah, I mean, what you just said is accurate. There are schedules in the rate case showing how the costs are allocated, and it's I would say it's a many of our employees are both Centerpoint and HSP employees. So those costs are allocated a percentage of how much work they do for one or the other. Same with the equipment and the vehicles and the buildings. So that it's all set forth in the rate case and how it's split up.
So in that case, then what Commissioner Partridge seemed to be discussing in her new 30 shouldn't be that hard because it's already separated, correct? And it's just saying you can't recover those costs through your unregulated. The unregulated can't subsidize, or the vice versa. The regulated can't subsidize the unregulated, and that's already happening, is what I think I heard you say.
Chair, yeah, my first thought is that's something that we would do in the next rate case regardless.
So you're okay with Partridge's new 30?
I'd want to talk to our team back here just to be sure I'm not missing something, but my first thought is the part on the general rate case anyway seems like that would be something we're doing anyway.
Okay, and maybe we'd want to hear from the department if that's, especially on that regulated versus unregulated cost allocation question. Dr. Lieb, I don't know if Ms. Campbell is on this docket or tracking, but we would assume that your folks are looking at these schedules and confirming that the unregulated side is not subsidizing the regulated side of the shop or the business.
Chair Sieben, that would be correct. The department would be carefully tracking to make sure that the unregulated is not in any way subsidizing the regulated business. And Nancy is online, and Nancy Campbell, and has turned on her camera, so I'll let her add any additional color if she wants.
Welcome, Ms. Campbell. Please state your name for the record.
Good morning, Nancy Campbell for the Department of Commerce. And yes, we certainly have, will pay attention to this and have been paying attention to make sure regulated and non-regulated is separated and making sure that there aren't any appropriate subsidies.
And so do you think this, and I assume that Commissioner, if Centerpoint is indeed okay with new 30, I assume you would think it's a good idea, though, to just have them do a compliance filing here to like pencil that out and be a little more explicit. Is that helpful?
Yes, I think that's very helpful. And yes, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay. Commissioner Tuma.
Madam Chair, I think it'd probably be good to take a break and let them kind of talk to make sure, but I would probably suggest adding some language, just if you look at 15. And I would change it, the first part of it being within 15 days of the order, CP will file their transition plan for the specifics, on the specifics of the bill separation, period. This will delineate the cost allocated between regulated and non-regulated in order to comply with the order. And then I would just then, after the words parties or participants may file a request for comment within, I would say, 30 days, and then the rest of the 15. So it would be the negative checkoff. It's a traditional negative checkoff language. So in other words, all what you put in the order, Commissioner Partridge, would be in there. They have to explain their plan to accomplish the separate bills, and then there would be a 15 days. They'll have more than that time because it'll take a while for our order to come out, and then 30 days for the parties to respond. And so we'll let them, after they talk with each other, tell us if they can refine it better than what I did, and hopefully Ms. Kaler can then type it out so then it could be actually put up on the screen, and we'll work on that in the break. Only other thing I would have as a question for you is on your 3C.
The joint 3C, or I mean, I guess.
Partridge's alternative 3C.
Okay.
Centerpoint must mail, and then maybe put something in there, or I don't know how they refer to their electronic delivery of bills, if that includes mail. You know, mail to me is that thing that comes in my mailbox, but a lot of people, we now never see a mailed bill from our utility. And so I don't know if there's a term of art there that says I'm getting it also electronically.
Email?
Yeah, or whatever. Is that the term of art? So,
Sorry, that was a little.
so I just to make sure that they are separate both in mailing and in email. And they're saying
But
actual
it
word.
brings up an interesting point too. Like if people are getting automatic deduction from one account, then they'll need to have like make sure that they know that, and that's why it's probably good to have these reminders too. Like you might need to set up another banking thing so that if it's automatically deducted, you know it's coming, right? Too.
Yeah,
Madam
Madam Chair.
Chairman, Commissioners, if I could speak to that. So as you talk about this, you see this is complex, and there's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot to be considered. With respect to the compliance filing, we already have in our agreed order item 27, which may cover what you've been talking about in terms of because part 15 was not part of our agreement. But perhaps you can modify the language of 27 to incorporate the other things that you need. We don't have to add 15 back in. But the other comment I want to make is we really do need some time to do this right, and 15 days. I mean, we were already aggressive with a 30-day compliance filing, so shortening it, I think, would end up in not getting the best product to you. So I'd encourage you to
That's
consider
fair.
a longer time period.
And maybe on the break, then the parties can jointly discuss that a good like solution for all of those that, because I hear what.
I don't have to draft the language. It's much better you do it.
Yeah, and I think what Commissioner Tuma was trying to do by doing the negative checkoff is just like ensure that you do the compliance and then it comes back to us and we don't have to bring it up again in a meeting like this. Just so.
Got it. Madam Chair, too, just a comment to the advocates. I think it's really good. If you guys probably went all around, I remember when Minigasco started doing this, they actually wanted to
You have
rate
to
base all
speak
this.
into your mic. Oh, now
That's
it's
right.
picking you up.
They all wanted to rate base all the buying of the furnaces and stuff like that, and so the big fight was, okay, we'll let you put it on the same bill, and that was such a big fight. So that actually to get to this place is a good effort. I think it is made possible, Madam Chair. What I've been thinking about it is because of automatic payment. Now it's not as a challenge to mail all these to everybody. A lot of people get locked into automatic payments and they look it online. So I think it makes it a lot easier. So just kudos to the advocates. I didn't think they were going to get this far, and we're going to end up with a fight over separate bills. So just a thought.
Yeah. Any Commissioner Partridge?
I just wanted to say, Chair Sieben, that I appreciate and support your idea to just add some things into 27. So if you could just make sure that a sample bill would be included there. And then,
A sample bill?
yeah, the number 15 asks that they file a sample bill, and number 27 doesn't specifically say sample bill. So I just wanted to clarify that I'd like that to be filed for review.
Oh, a sample bill to the commission,
Yeah.
not to every
Right.
customer.
Yeah, as part of that compliance filing to say, here's what we think it'll look like. We've worked with CAO, this is what we've come up with. And then other parties can have an opportunity to weigh in if they feel like there's any problem. And within that, you could also file, to Commissioner Tuma's point, the cost to do separate mailings, the additional cost, so that we can review that too.
Yeah, and maybe at the break, if you get more information about how much it will cost in your proposal for the subsidization of the regulated now versus unregulated that you said at the beginning, if you can start, I don't know how to address that issue. Like, and Mr. Luce, maybe you look like you have something to say, but we don't have any like sense of the magnitude of which the unregulated is subsidizing the regulated. And I get that Commissioner Partridge is saying like you could file that, but it might be helpful before we make that decision to know a rough estimate of if we're increasing costs for the
Right.
regulated gas customers by a couple $1 million, which I
Right.
doubt it's that much. Like, I'd rather know that before we decide.
Because then it'll just come back to us anyways, because it'll be negatively checked off, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the volume of customers who have non-regulated service is about 160,000 customers. So I don't know if we can drill down and get you what the mailing costs are and
Sure.
how that would change, at the break here.
It's not all we get mail.
Right.
So it's probably not a ton of subsidization that's happening from HSP over to the regulated then.
We don't know for sure. I mean,
Sure.
maybe one comment before the break is, this is a customer complaint appeal, which has continually broadened in scope into now we're addressing rate issues, which may be
Yeah,
more
that's what we
properly
do here, though.
addressed in
So
a rate case,
that's-
but that's my reaction to that.
Sure. But
Yeah.
if I may, Chair Sieben, I don't want this to happen again. And as I said, I'm very frustrated about how this was handled. And so I don't think these need to be combined. And I certainly don't want to increase costs on the regulated customers, but I also do not want people to fall victim to what this complainant fell victim to, and therefore we are going to have to take action, and there's always cost implications to action. So we want to know what those cost implications are before we make that decision. We have a compliance filing here that you've already agreed to, so you can file that there, and I would ask that the OAG agree to, and CUB and the department agree to look at that very carefully. And if that cost appears to be burdensome or could be problematic, or you feel like it doesn't, the costs are higher than the benefits that would flow from that, then I would ask you to please file something as soon as possible. And these advocates are very attentive and rigorous and involved, and I really don't expect that this is going to fall through the cracks with this group over here. So I think it's appropriate. And so if we can add that in, and then I've already asked staff if they could help modify 3C so that it indicates that it will be contingent on that negative checkoff of what the cost implication would be. Awesome.
How much time do you think the parties, you need to work on this stuff and come back? Like a half hour? Is that too long? That's 15?
15 minutes?
Okay, so we'll come back in 15 minutes. The commission is adjourned. I mean, not adjourned, just kidding. Commission is in recess.
Test. Yeah.
Testing.
Yep. Okay. Testing, testing, testing. I think you need to raise it maybe. Testing, testing. Wireless 1. Testing, testing. Testing, test. That's good. That's good.
Should I just use one and you can take away 4 then?
Are you going to be testing, 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 testing. Well, it's better than nothing. Testing, testing, testing. Here, if we keep these at a similar place, then they should both pick up, and then this one can drive the auto.
When I go to court, I still bring easels and, Sharpies, so if you have a microphone, that's a bonus. Mohaban.
The commission will come back from its recess and we'll turn to whoever wants to speak. If you're at Centerpoint, if you had suggested language, or Mr. Crawford, if you do. You can also use the center mic and state your name for the record, please.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Brandon Crawford with the Citizens Utility Board of Minnesota. We were able to kind of incorporate everything the Commission was talking about, what the parties were talking about, into a modified decision option 27 that seeks to address both the sample bill, the proposed allocation processes, the costs of the billing changes, and we understand from the company that this might not be able to be implemented immediately, and there will be kind of back-end technological changes that need to be pursued in order to have this be rolled out across the company's entire service territory. So we do have a modified 27. We sent that to staff. One of the changes that we did have to make is to modify that 30-day negative checkoff slightly, recognizing that there will be quarterly compliance filings if it does take longer, but it allows for concerns to be raised during each of those filings, and that to come back to the Commission if there are issues at all. So happy to answer any questions that you may have about this language.
And then just to be clear, you also, this just is for modified 27. Did you have a chance, or we're good, all the parties are good with Commissioner Partridge's other decision options as well? I see heads nodding. Okay. And,
Not entirely.
okay, just a second. Did you have a question, Commissioner Partridge, or your mic isn't on.
Thank you, Chair Stephen. I was just going to mention that we put some language together to modify my modified 3C to reflect that negative checkoff on costs, that any changes would be contingent to that. So we can look at that later, but sounds like the company has probably some broader issue.
Please go ahead, and why don't you just start from do you want to start with, sorry, I'm not being very clear. Do you want to start with the language that was on the screen first and just indicate that you're okay with that language that you worked on the break?
Yeah, sure. We did consult on that language, so we're on board with the revised 27. I think that obviates the need for, we were talking about decision 15 at one point, but I don't think we
Okay, and then what about, did you want to move on to, did you have concerns, the other parties were nodding in agreement with Commissioner Partridge's alternatives, but did you have any remaining objections or things to say about those?
A little bit of information and our position on these. So with 3C on the separate mailing, you were looking for some estimates of the scope of that. Our best estimate, and don't hold us to it, but we want to put a number on the number of paper bills that go to customers who have regulated and non-regulated services, about 40,000. So that would, when you're considering costs and things like that, the compliance filing will provide more information on that. But that's what we can offer based on the amount of time we've had to look at that.
And what about, before you move off of 3C, what about, how would you propose to modify the mailing component versus electronic mailing?
They did that already, but new 3C that's up there now. So it seems to
I don't see it.
It just, they kind of just say, to talk generically about bills instead of saying.
Oh, I see. This is new language in your 3C that's on the screen.
Yeah, Chair Stephen, we modified it from saying mail to transmit, just to cover any ways that the bills are coming out.
Got it. Sorry, I'm slow.
That's
And you saw that Centerpoint and are okay with that?
We're okay with the modified 3C.
Okay.
Okay.
We understand that it covers email.
Okay.
We had previously indicated we were okay with the modified 14 with the additional notices that have been proposed. On the rate issue, on 30, I guess two things to say. One is we don't know what these costs are going to be. We are not in a rate case, so the appropriate venue for that, I think, would be to actually see what the costs are and determine what they relate to and address it as part of a rate case. But the other thing I'd like to say is, as Commissioner Tuma had mentioned, we got to this point as a compromise years ago where it was agreed and approved by the Commission that these HSP bills could be incorporated with and sent out as a joint bill. So that's not something that the company decided to do on its own. It's approved by this Commission. It's the status quo. And so if there's a determination not to change the status quo, it's fair to understand that this is something that should be borne by both sides of the equation, the regulated and unregulated. And rather than make that decision outside of a rate case, rather than make that decision without even understanding of what the costs are or what they relate to, we would suggest that the proper course of action is to defer this question until there actually is a request for recovery of these rates. And there may be a determination not to even request them.
But I thought you were, and I appreciate that history that I wasn't part of like the decision to allow the unregulated to put it on your regulated bill. But I thought the earlier discussion with Ms. Campbell also said that like you already don't recover the HSP costs on customer on the regulated side, and that is indicated in your rate schedules in your rate case filing. So, and as part of the compromise, when you came here today, you already said you were going to separate the cost. So what about 30 is the real rub that you don't, that is the problem?
My understanding is that 30 is directed at the costs of this transition
Mm-hmm.
that we are going to incur over the next year to do the separation. We're not talking about cost once they are separated. Of course, the HSP billing will not be part of rates. But what this is directed at is like unwinding something that the commission approved years ago, which is an appropriate billing mechanism where there were benefits of having both bills presented to the commissioner together. Now
So
the
let me-
decision is to
yeah.
separate it out, and to the extent there are costs in doing so,
Mm-hmm.
we don't think that is appropriate to determine at this point in time that none of that should be recoverable in rates.
None of the costs of transitioning, but they already are separated by costs. Your call service agent already has a allocation of the time they spend on HSP versus the time they spend on regulated, but the cost of mailing two pieces of mail, you're saying that transition, we had already, this former commission already said you could have one bill, and so there will be costs to change that you have two envelopes instead of one, and that, sorry, I'm not trying to be like obstinate, I just don't really get it still.
Yeah, I don't think I'm being entirely clear. I'm not talking about cost once this transition has occurred, but for example, there's going to be a lot of IT costs.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to reprogram our systems. We're going to have to set up systems to allow for this separate billing. My understanding is that that's what 30 was directed at.
Mm-hmm.
And we just think we would ask that you defer that and consider it as part of the rate.
Because the cost to like to doing the IT stuff, those, some costs you're saying should be borne by regulated and some by unregulated, because previously the commission said they could be combined. So redoing it is like still something that, instead of adopting Partridge New 30, you're saying make that decision, commission, later about whether some of the costs could be allocated to the regulated side for the transition.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I can imagine some arguments in my mind why to continue to do Partridge 30, but I guess I would like to hear from the advocates
In the
why they-
department.
in the department, particularly Ms. Campbell, because the question I would have is, we're out of a rate case, and if this doesn't fall in the test year, it seems like it's kind of already covered, and so unless they're going to ask for deferred accounting or something, it's kind of a non-issue, and I'm certainly not going to do deferred accounting. So I'm just curious how this all works, and so I'm not missing it. It seems like if it's not going to end up in a test year, it's not a big deal.
Ms. Campbell?
Yes. So, correct, it won't be in a test year, and this change will occur outside of that. But there will be obviously some costs associated with separating these bills. So I understand why Centerpoint is saying that, and we could have them provide in the compliance filing what that number looks like. But the reality is we would see those increased costs in their next rate case.
Yeah, but once it's done, see, that's the point I'm trying to make. We're going to see the ongoing costs in the next rate case. I get that they were going to have now some billing that's going to be now all regulated ratepayer billing. I'm just talking about that cost of using your IT services and figuring out how to, how this is going to work and making the compliance filings and all that. I thought that's already built into what we've given them for IT services or management or whatever we categorized it before, and they're going to collect that in the rate case. And if they have to do a little bit more work, that's just the result of the way our rate cases work. That's the part that I'm somewhat confused about, that how they're going to go back and get this cost of just making the transition outside of a test year.
Yeah, so if I could, I guess my example would be more the kind of more the going forward costs. I'm guessing they're focusing on like the postage stamp and stuff like that. But you're right, the transition, if it's outside the test year, will be difficult unless they request deferred accounting. But there will be some costs that were shared. You know, let's say they had, I don't know, like a $4 or $5 million of shared type of IT billing costs, postage costs, stuff like that. And maybe before regulated was paying, you know, they're smaller, so maybe they were paying like $2 million of that $5 million. So that is an increased cost to Centerpoint, and it will be an increased cost to ratepayers. And it might be interesting for them to include that in their compliance filing to see what that looks like.
And I think that's the intent, that will be included. It's just that it's still. I don't know if the AGs or department has any other comments or thoughts. Or Cub. Yes.
Thank you, Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma. Just specifically, so there's sort of two costs we're talking about, the ongoing, but also I think Commissioner Partridge's new 30 is talking about those initial costs, right, to do the transition. And I just would like to highlight, while, you know, the company is maybe right if the commission had previously, not this commission, but a commission had previously approved the joint billing. That's not really the issue, though. It's not that they're just on the same bill. It's how the company has been allocating the payments to unregulated business before necessarily allowing full coverage of the regulated gas service. And so we understand that changing the cost allocation default is difficult for the company, and that's why parties have agreed to separating the billing. It's not that just, you know, the commission had previously approved the same billing. So we still think that the company should bear those costs under Partridge, the new 30.
And I think they just do the way we do rate cases. That's the part that, so I don't think Partridge 30 is all that bad for you, unless you're going to try to push it into rate case and ask for deferred accounting. And I can assure you, I don't know where my two friends and other friends not here are, I'm not going to let you get deferred accounting for this one. So we might be wasting our time.
One question I have, and I'm not trying to undermine what you're doing here, Commissioner Partridge, but a question is, like, to make this fair, is could we modify your 30 to say, and to demonstrate in its next general rate case? So essentially what we'd be doing is, I thought what Ms. Campbell said is, like, they might have expenses for the transition, the IT software or whatever, and they could still put those costs in there'd be a compliance filing in this docket to show how they're separated and what the costs are. And then those costs could still be put in the next rate case, but we're not deciding now whether they're recoverable or not. I mean, I don't know if that's something that the advocates would be for or not, but it might be that it's like we're arguing over not a lot of money for the transition costs. Like, I don't think in the next rate case we're going to be really entirely, like, of course the regulated side is going to pay the regulated costs and the unregulated is going to pay their costs, and we're only talking about the transition costs, and that should be shown in the next rate case too, how they are or not included in the requested revenue requirement. So I don't know what you think of that first, Commissioner Partridge. It might be a way just to, I don't want I'm not, again, trying to undermine you, but just, or your proposal here, but to say, like, if we want to look at it in the next rate case, it could be Ms. Campbell said she would look at it, and then we can make the decision in the rate case.
Yeah, Madam Chair, so just to clarify, I think Ms. Campbell was sort of combining different costs that are not considered in my decision option. Excuse me. So we, of course, will be considering any ongoing costs that the regulated company incurs as a part of normal billing after we make this transition. That's not an issue. We already have a compliance filing where we've asked for that information. Company has agreed to provide that, so that's not an issue. Issue is that transition cost, billing, system upgrades. I think Commissioner Tuma is correct that it wouldn't be in their test year. If they want to come in and ask for deferred accounting, they can. I think my point was just to say, make very clear that I don't think it should be rate recoverable. I think Ms. Carroll made a compelling case for that yes, the commission may have said you could combine the bills. They did not say that you could allocate the costs in a way that would create additional fees and disconnections for customers. So unwinding that is not, I think, on your regulated customers. It's on HSP, and that was the point I was making. But to your point, Commissioner Tuma, I think you're right, bringing that up, that practically speaking, it's not going to be in your rate case. You'd have to make some sort of filing and request for deferred accounting, and we could decide to accept or deny it at that point. So I think it's fine. We can probably let 30 go and be in the same place.
I would modify it along what Commissioner Sieben is saying, is require Centerpoint to account for
the transition
costs, and then require Xpoint to make put it in the compliance filing. So we want them to specifically account for those costs, and they can account for them, put it in a ledger, and give it to Ms. Campbell, and she'll tell us whether she thinks they're recoverable or not. If we disagree, we'll deal with it at that stage. But I think you're right. I think there's two different things you're looking at. What is that transition cost that they're going to do now within this particular rate structure? And what are the ongoing costs? We'll deal with that in the rate case. But if you want to account for them, go ahead. I don't know.
Sure.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I think Centerpoint would be acceptable with modifying the compliance filing to just require us to provide those transition costs in one of the status reports. If that was sufficient and we didn't need to do number 30, I think we are belaboring something that maybe isn't going to be that consequential, but I think that would be our preference.
We'll just modify 27. So I don't know if our crack modifiers can throw that language in someplace, but.
So modified 27 is what, I don't know what's happening. Commissioner Toom, help me out here.
She's typing it right now, so I'm just watching her type. And that looks good to me, as long as it's good to Commissioner Partridge.
Looks great.
So essentially, only the transition costs, they'll be accounted for in this docket and then put in the next. Just to be clear, though, too, even though we're dropping that language from new 30, the costs will be, if Centerpoint wants to recover them, they'll be put in your next rate case. That's the way it will go, even though it doesn't say that. Okay.
Ms. Kaylor, I mean, I think I want to be very clear. They're going to do two things. They're going to give us the transition cost as a separate accounting, and they're also going to give us an estimate of what the cost is going to be going forward. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, contemplated in the new 27. And so they're giving us two things that we can see, mm-hmm. And one may come back. Both will possibly come back in the rate case, but the highlighted language will be a little less problematic in my mind. But.
Mm-hmm. Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Partridge. Commissioner Partridge.
Could we hear from maybe the Office of the Attorney General and CUB, I'm getting turned around upside down,
Well,
so I think this is great. Does this seem fine? Everybody good?
Thank you, Chair Sieben, Commissioner Partridge. Yeah, I don't think CUB has a problem with this. I think it's helpful to have the reporting now. It seems like it's putting the decision into a future rate case, and that's fine with us.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'm getting a little turned around also by the various changes. I think the language as it currently stands is okay. You know, like we like the idea of them, you know, reporting what the costs are going to be. That's good regulation. Good for us to all know that so that we can evaluate things. It's not in this language, but this discussion about like then they can put it into the next rate, the transition cost into the next rate case. That's a little concerning because that sounds like deferred accounting without it being deferred accounting.
That's the way we're proposing for them to file to us to say, how do you make that determination of what expense should be allowable to be recoverable from rates? So I think if I'm hearing what Centerpoint is saying is like, this is not a rate case. Like we could decide now like you're not going to get any of those transition costs, but it's like a little bit of risk on the commission to now make a decision like that when it's still like we don't even know what the costs are, and I don't think this commission is going to be like, yeah, you can charge all the transition costs to the ratepayers, for example. That's not what happens now under current rate cases. Ms. Campbell said like it's okay to look at it in a rate case. And so I think all we're doing is saying we'll look at it in the rate case, if that helps clarify. We're not making a determination now on the transition costs, saying they all have to go to HSP, in other words. We're deferring that decision till later, which I think that's the way things normally work here too. So hopefully you're okay with it that way. Unless, I mean, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to explain what I think we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and that makes sense. You know, I'll just come back to what the language says here. You know, having the information is important for many reasons, and so the language as written right now looks fine to us.
Okay, good. Are we ready for an overall motion then? Commissioner Partridge?
I have one additional note. I don't think this is a big deal, but there are a couple places where the company had pulled out, I might need help, but I think I can do this. I have too many pieces of paper. I apologize. So in a couple places we had asked, okay, here's a good example. Number 7, B. And I think it's in a couple places here where the decision options indicated that the company would tell customers what order they would apply payments, and the negotiated joint decision options removed those because you'll no longer have HSP included in there. My thought, though, is based on the record, that is important for certain payment plans of whether a payment is applied to current charges or arrears. And so it may be helpful for the company to indicate to customers in what order even regulated payments are applied. Do you have an objection to that?
Wait, Commissioner Partridge, can I make sure I understand your question? Are you saying, I thought when we're doing separate bills, we're assured customers then that if they call Centerpoint to make a payment towards their gas bill, that payment is fully going to the gas bill, to the regulated side?
Yes, but we don't know whether it's going to arrears first or current gas charges first for the regulated side.
Oh.
And in some payment plans, as indicated on the record, the customer has to pay the full current charges to keep the payment plan. And so if the payment were applied to arrears first, it would jeopardize the payment plan. And so even on the regulated side, it's still a bit of a question of where partial payments would be applied if they don't cover all of arrears and current charges. Does that remain an issue, or am I overthinking this?
Centerpoint.
Commissioners, from the company's point of view, I think it's out of scope of what we've been addressing in terms of regulated versus non-regulated payments. When we do a payment plan, like a budget plan, customer is informed of the terms of the plan. If there was a place to say, like, where would a partial payment go, I think would go in sort of the discussion, initial discussion of the plan.
Okay.
For the agreement. But I don't know if, we probably have to talk to some people about how that's addressed currently. But I'm not aware that that was an issue that was an issue with this particular.
I thought we had.
It was on
requirements,
the
but I could-
record.
yeah,
Is it in 7B too?
Yes,
That was-
7B is what I'm looking at. And it is in the record, and there was discussion in this docket on this, so I do think it's in scope.
Why don't we ask the OAG or one of the parties that
Sure.
supported 7B, what if they think the agreement is getting to what they had proposed in 7B? If anyone, Cub or the OAG, wants to speak to that.
Thank you, Chair Sieben, Commissioner Partridge. I will say there is in Minnesota rule currently a requirement in how credit gets applied to the oldest outstanding account balance before current gas charges. And staff's briefing paper did an excellent job in summarizing how that applies. My understanding of Commissioner Partridge's recommendation is to put that language like somewhere online. Is that?
Madam Chair,
Oh,
I think it's sprinkled within the decision options. So in number 7, on the customer billing statement, it would say how those payments would be applied. And the reason it seems important is because the statute may be contrary to the terms of the payment plan. The rule maybe, and not the statute, the
Chair
rule.
Sieben, Commissioner Partridge, it is a little sort of wonky in how it then transfers to like a budget payment plan.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that the current decision options that parties had agreed to would include showing that language. So if you wanted to add that in, that would need to be done.
Well, no, I think that is what we're asking you, like, why did you support 7B? And if the agreement doesn't incorporate the allocation of payments between arrearages and their bill, like you're saying, you're putting on, I want to hear more like why we should do that. I guess I'm trying to. Mr. Cherney, you support it. Did you have anything to add?
So to be clear, in the joint letter, we had not originally, originally we had. In the joint letter, we had not. And the thinking behind that was that because after these discussions with the company, we were going to be separating the billing, then the question of the default order of payments between regulated and unregulated businesses, that problem was obviated by splitting out the bills.
But that's between regulated and unregulated, and I think what Commissioner Partridge and Cub was discussing is within regulated, the allocation, and so that wasn't your topic?
But my understanding of what you were saying is essentially that's provided for by rule, and so that if the commission wanted to include that additional information in bills, just so that people understand that's how it works, we have no problem with that. But 7B, we were originally just talking about something different, so that's why we originally removed it.
Okay. Madam Chair, may I ask, will this cause harm? Will this cause any harm to the payment plans? I think that part of the confusion of this complainant was how things were getting allocated, and I think that a similar situation could occur if people have arrears. I am not deeply steeped in how this works, and so it does seem like it could be helpful to give customers information on how payments will be applied, unless, and my understanding is, unless they indicate otherwise, that they could say, you know, Centerpoint, I'd like for you to put this toward my current gas charges first, or something like that. Otherwise, rule would indicate that it goes to oldest charges first. Is that?
I think
Commissioners, I think I can help on this. I've gotten some information from our side that there's language to that effect on the bill presently.
Great.
And so when we submit our sample bill, we can ensure that that is included and everyone has to review it.
Wonderful.
great.
Okay, I have a motion then. Thank you. Okay. I am going to walk slowly through this. All right, my motion is to,
Are you working off of the joint parties supported decision options or the regular decision options?
Madam Chair, I am working off of the staff's briefing paper decision options,
Got
but they are very aligned, I think, with the joint decision options as well. And I just want to note that the reason I am moving number 2, which is to deny the complainant's request for adjustments, is that it is my understanding that the company has already made those adjustments to the bill in the favor of the complainant, and that we wouldn't want to unwind any of that benefit to the complainant at this point, but that we take her complaint extremely seriously, as is shown by the rest of our decisions here, and we thank her for, as the chair said, for bringing this forward. Okay. 3A, B, and C as modified, double modified. 7, A through D. 10. 14 modified.
Wait, and you were including all of 10?
Yes. Ms. Callert, I think it's actually Partridge modified 14, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, excellent. Okay. 16. 17, A through E. 19. 21, A and B. 22, A through C. 23, 24, 25, 26, A and B, and 27 modified, and then Sieben new 29.
Okay, Commissioner Partridge, I appreciate your motion. It's different in some ways from what was the joint parties had filed, I think, or some were not. Some were included in your motion that I'm not sure we heard from the parties yet. Or maybe you're tracking, Commissioner Tuma and are okay with the Commissioner Partridge, like, overall additions here that weren't in the late filing, but at least, for my benefit, it'd be helpful to hear from the parties about whether Commissioner Partridge's motion is consistent with the late filing and your agreement. Dr. Lieb, why don't you begin, and you can tell us what your overall thoughts on Commissioner Partridge's motion, if you want.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. The department is supportive of Commissioner Partridge's motion. I think it includes some additional things that we were not able to work into a joint decision option settlement type letter here at the end, but I don't think we have concerns with any of the additions.
And Mr. Attorney?
Chair Stephen, Commissioners, that's exactly right. You know, when we were working on these things, there were just certain decision options that we weren't able to come to an agreement with the company on, but we like some of the additions that you've included. So,
And,
Chair Stephen, Commissioner Partridge, we agree. We like this motion.
and to Centerpoint.
I think there were at least half a dozen new things that were not part of our agreement. I'm not prepared to give the company's position on those other things without having consulted. So, have a break for that.
Mr. Luce, what do you, since you're usually here more in front of us, like, do you want time to look it over, or do you, I mean, we could just vote on it and then it might pass, but if you have strong objections, I mean, Commissioner Partridge's motion included things that were in the briefing papers, so that, like, if you just need a few minutes, like, to gather your thoughts about what was included that wasn't in your agreement, that's totally fair, and we can take a short break.
Yeah. Chair and Commissioners, I mean, at first glance, there's some things that don't seem to make a lot of sense. I was saying that
Why don't we take 5 minutes, and then you can, like, say the ones that you especially have concerns about, and we'll come back in 5 minutes, or how about at noon? The commission stands in recess until noon.
To this one. That's what I thought too.
The commission will come back from its recess, and Centerpoint, did you want to give your perspective on what was included in Commissioner Partridge's motion that you have heartburn over or don't like?
Chair and Commissioners, I don't know if I use the word heartburn, but there's three of them. We're okay with most of them. I will say that some of them we were in a different docket where we were already going to agree to them, so our thought was just to move them to the cold weather rule docket. But,
Why don't you talk numbers? What decision option are you talking about?
that was like 24, 25, 17, C, D, and E. We're fine keeping that in here too. So.
Okay, so is there anything in Commissioner Partridge's motion that you especially object to?
Yes. 22, as you know, our call center, we have approved in the winter cold weather rule, approved scripted scripts that are approved by the OAG's office. It's not clear if this is changing that script. I guess the other thing is we have customers call about their accounts, and if our call center agents are then to be bringing up disconnection with them, if that wasn't even on the table, that seems to be escalating that call. There just seems to be a lot of unintended.
What specifically in 22 is new that you're not already required to do by rule or statute?
To state that at an exact amount at which the customer becomes at risk of disconnection. I think B is fine. And then C, I guess if those come up, obviously we're required to do those. If there's, so I think A is the biggest one that could be problematic.
The point here is the script would be changing, in 22 in general, you're saying that the arrears amount at which the customer becomes at risk of disconnection, right now you don't want to say what that amount is for the customer?
No, we're not saying that. We're saying that in every call, that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily a relevant thing. If someone calls and says they bring up an arrearage that they just want to pay, and we say our call center agent is then forced to say, well, at this amount you become at risk of gas disconnection. That would be an odd thing to say to the customer. The customer would be like, well, why are we talking about disconnection now? That's not even on the table.
And Commissioner Partridge, did you want to add about your perspective of why you think that should be included here?
Thank you, Chair Sieben. In talking with staff, they seemed generally supportive of 22. Maybe the OAG, given that you've negotiated the script with the company, do you have any concerns?
I think the scripts are approved by our CAO.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But the OAG supported this change.
Got it.
So, Mr. Cherney, why did you support 22A?
So the reason that we included 22, just all of 22.
No, I'm asking about 22A.
Just 22A. I mean, if that's a real big issue, we don't have to have it.
Sure. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Partridge.
I think that's fine. I think that it is a little bit of a black box about when you disconnect. I think we've covered that elsewhere, though, that you need a policy so that it's more transparent. So I am fine removing 22A if other commissioners are fine with it.
And then, Mr. Luce, what other specific numbers in Commissioner Partridge's motion do you think don't work or you have strong objection to?
Chair and Commissioners, 23, that's just on our end. staff person isn't necessarily going to have the gas information available to them. So our thought is to bifurcate the two.
And is there a different way you could say that in 23? Because I think it is relevant if a person is behind in their gas service and your HSP salesperson is like, well, we need you to buy a furnace now. It's kind of like a big difference if you're already behind on your current gas bill. I think that's where my read of the staff recommendation was, like, I don't know how you can, you know what I mean? It's like, why do you need to buy a product that HSP is marketing, like different products or different services that are connected to your gas service? But if the person is in arrears, it's almost like, I wish you could just not, we can't tell you not to do it, but you shouldn't be trying to sell them a furnace plan when they can't even pay their regular gas bill.
Chair of Commissioners, I can give you an example of we have a technician get called out to a gas leak. They find the furnace isn't working. They red tag it. They then inform the customer that they have options, that they do sell furnaces. That technician wouldn't have that information on them, what their gas bill is, for example. So not all of our HSP sales come from someone on the phone just calling or trying to sell. It's the technicians often will then technically sell the furnace, even though it's kind of like, well, the furnace doesn't work. Here's your options. So you don't have to buy it from us, obviously, but it's a service they do offer. So there are situations where where they wouldn't, that person, I guess, the salesperson, even though that's not their main job, but they would be in that case selling the furnace, and they wouldn't have access to that information, not quick access to it.
Commissioner Partridge.
Well, Chair Sieben, I agree with you. I think one of the things that came out in this particular complainant's case is that she was unable to pay for her gas bill, and yet she had all of these services tacked on, and she was very confused about which ones she was supposed to have or needed to have and what was optional. And so I think this is trying to get at that very issue, that if someone cannot pay their bill, don't try to sell them a bunch of stuff. And the red tag, I do understand that scenario. So I think it's tricky. I don't know what to do here. I guess we can remove it if it cannot be done.
Madam Chair of the Commission, it seems like this is regulating now the non-regulated business, imposing a duty on HSP. I understand there are concerns about people being confused and not knowing how to manage their money and things like that. But I don't know if this is the way to address that, especially when this is a duty imposed on the non-regulated part of the company, if adopted.
Yes, Mr. Mohaban, it is, in part because these two businesses have been intertwined so much that customers do not know what is regulated and what is unregulated, what they need to pay, what they don't need to pay. And it was not a decision of the current commissioners to allow that to happen. I understand that a previous commission made a different decision, and now we're trying to unwind these things, and in doing so, we are putting some obligation on the regulated side of the company to coordinate in a way that can help customers, and that this particular complainant and her situation really illustrated some of the harms that happen when these two parts of your business get intertwined in such a way that your customers cannot distinguish. And so you seem to be able to coordinate well across your regulated and unregulated when it suits your unregulated business. You can find all of this information about customers to market these products to them. But when it comes to identifying when they're in arrears, suddenly there's this breakdown in information. And that is frustrating. And I cannot fix the breakdown in information, but I would like to not have the company marketing and pressuring their customers who are already struggling to pay their bills with additional unnecessary products that they may mistake for necessary insurance or protections. And so I am not sympathetic to trying to allow the unregulated business to go be unregulated and free at this point, because you guys have intertwined these in a way that have harmed customers.
We'll see how this language is regulating HSP. It says when a customer buys a product, okay, require Centerpoint, the regulated entity, to notify the customer they're in arrears. I guess it would be an additional notice, I guess would be the intent there. They've probably already been notified that they're in arrears. But I guess what we're saying is this is a flag to Centerpoint that you may be making the problem worse, and that you need to communicate with your customer, your regulated customer from your regulated entity, that, oh, by the way, do you know, remember you're in arrears? That's the way I read it. So I don't read it as we're telling HSP you can't sell them a product, but we may be putting you on notice, and that helps our CAO, I think, then. It's like, why'd you keep selling them this stuff, you know?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we're very sensitive to the concern about people not being pressured to buy things that they shouldn't have, or I don't think this docket or this issue was demonstrating any untoward sales practices. The customer was confused. We don't have all the details as to why that happened, but you know, for 23 to be implemented, it does require HSP apparently to notify. So we have.
No, it requires your regulated Centerpoint, who would have the information about the people who are in arrears, to be notified.
For them to do that, HSP has to notify the
that they're marketing
person,
them.
the Centerpoint credit people, that there's a planned purchase. So every time somebody needs to get a repair on their furnace, has to buy a part, and that call has to happen from a technician in the field to the credit department to determine this information.
I don't see that saying that. Okay, I see it saying when a customer purchases HSP products or services, okay, that would, I assume, get flagged in your system. And I would assume that maybe if it doesn't get flagged in your system, to regulated, I think we're asking them to set out a notice. Say, oh, by the way, do you know as you're buying all these other products, you're in arrears? That's the way I read 23. It's just to kind of remind the customer you're going backwards here.
It seems like the more we talk about this and you know, focusing on that language, so it sounds like the notification takes place after the purchase.
It doesn't say you can't purchase or you shouldn't
If it
purchase.
says before a customer purchases.
It says when a customer purchases.
I know, what if we changed it to say before, to your point? Like if you're.
That makes it harder.
That's what they're worried about, is they're reading the when as before, and I'm reading the when as after the fact, when the purchase has been made.
As a practical matter, if a person has an arrears, they get notified with every bill that they are in arrears. So the notification's already happening, and this is tying it to the purchase of an HSP product. So, I mean, is that the intent, that there would be a second notice, or?
That's the way I read it, but Ms. Lieb is here to try to enlighten us.
Dr. Lieb.
Chair Sieben, we have an idea that would fix this who's regulated, who the commission has control over regulatorily concern. I think because the commission does have control over the regulated Centerpoint entity, you could just tell Centerpoint that they cannot share customer information to the unregulated entity for marketing of this service if a customer is in arrears for gas payment, which would make it so that they would not market these services towards customers that had gas arrears.
Madam Chair, I like that solution. Does the company feel like that would be a workable request, that you do not send any customer information from the regulated side, any of the customers' information who are currently in arrears to be to the HSP side to be marketed to?
That sounds to me like a big can of worms to try to answer on the spot when it's just been brought up now.
I have another solution, Madam Chair. Being that we cannot seem to come to an agreement on this and that there are logistical issues with the techs being in this on site, maybe we move this to the compliance filing to say something along the lines of how might the company be able to avoid marketing HSP services to customers who are in arrears, and you could include that in your compliance filing.
A plan to not market to customers who are in arrears?
Yes.
Mr. Luce, that sounds like a compromise you might want to take.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. Excellent.
Count to two.
All right. All of that is solved.
Is there any other, Mr. Luce, other objections?
Chair and Commissioners, one more. 26B, I think this one might be a little bit easier. We're not going to know the number of HSP customers who receive lighting necessarily. We have HSP customers who have MERC or who have propane or who have, we have a number of HSP customers who don't have our gas service. Which goes somewhat to 23 as well, but
Maybe could we include something for the LIHEAP customers, Commissioner Partridge, or people, since it's also talking about in arrearage here, that could be put into the plan that they file in the compliance as well? You know, like kind of scoop it into
I think
a plan for how to not market or whatever your previous plan was. It's sort of isn't it the same thing? Like to say,
Well, this is reporting.
Well,
this is reporting the number.
yeah. Chair Steven, I wonder if the company would be okay with just on 26B changing number of HSP customers to number of joint gas HSP customers who receive LIHEAP, because then I think that they have the data for that, and that would mirror A. Would that be doable? I actually noted that in my notes and didn't bring it up that, yeah, you don't have data about LIHEAP customers outside of your own service territory. So you'd be, in that case, in your compliance filing the number of joint gas and HSP customers who are in arrears, and also the number of joint HSP and gas customers who receive LIHEAP.
Okay, great. Ms. Killert, was that clear? And then Mr. Luce, that was your last objection you wanted to raise that wasn't included in the settlement?
yes, Chair, that was.
So it sounds like overall we're still all on the same page in terms of now we've worked through this. There's joint agreement amongst the parties that this is a good direction to take. So thank you, Commissioner Partridge, for your motion. Is the motion clear for the order writer? Yes. Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Sieben. One small edit to 26. We realize it says annual service quality reporting in docket YRO2, and that we should strike annual service quality reporting because that's not what the YRO2 docket is.
We can't hear you.
Sorry, it needs to, I think the language needs to strike in its annual service quality reporting, and just say in YR02, because that's a different docket. There was a miscommunication there.
Ms. McShane, is that the right docket?
Ms. Carroll is correct that Y02 is cold weather rule and not service quality reporting. So let's
yes.
strike.
Okay. Any other, Commissioner Partridge incorporates that into her amended motion. Any other discussion of the motion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the motion prevails. Thank you, everyone, for your work on this. Oh, right. For sure.
She wasn't paying attention there.
She's just so trained so hard to be focused.
We're frozen. Our stuff's particularly bad today. Our equipment, yeah.
Mary, the camera's not on. Maybe that's good. We could just leave the camera off.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Oh no, it's frozen too. Poor Mary.
I think by rule, we only have to have an audio recording. So if the video doesn't work, it might be just fine. Excel's hoping we don't get to this item. Just kidding. Yeah.
That refund done. You'd say, hey, we gotta keep the money, the cameras didn't work. It was working fine, but it wasn't.
She was here. She saw the debacle before. We can't pull that one. Nice try though.
Okay, the commission will now take up agenda item number 3, just to notify everyone, the video system is not working, so hopefully we can still hear you if you're online and asked a question, or we can defer to the folks who are in the room. Mr. Boney, please announce item number 3.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Agenda item number 3 is in the matter of the application of Xcel Energy for authority to increase rates for electric service in the state of Minnesota. Sherco 3 related issue. Docket number is E-002/GR-12-961. The issue before the Commission today is, should the Commission approve the timing and methodology proposed by Xcel Energy for Commission-ordered refunds related to the 2011-2013 Sherco 3 outage? I will note that Xcel Energy filed updated decision options after these briefing papers were filed. Commissioners, you should all have a copy of those, and the parties and Commission staff are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And if, I don't know if we have any, why don't we first turn to Ms. Campbell? For some reason, we can now see you, Ms. Campbell, so that's great. Can you hear us, I assume, and I don't know if you can see us or not, but we can see you. So please state your name for the record, and then let us know if the department supports Xcel's filing that indicates their new alternative decision option number 3.
Sure. Nancy Campbell for the Department of Commerce. We support decision options 1, 2, and 4. We think our testimony supported refunding the $48 million refund for Sherco 3 through the FCA, which does not require interest on refunds or surcharges. Additionally, Xcel's paid $22 million in interest as part of this $48 million refund, 26 related to the replacement power costs. As a result, that's why we support decision options 1, 2, and 4. If the Commission thinks decision option 3 is appropriate, we would support Xcel's alternative decision option 3.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner questions. Commissioner Tuma.
From the company, if I could.
Could you please sit on the left side? Because not only our cameras are not cooperating today, but the microphones on the right side are not. Welcome, Ms. Steinhauer. Please state your name.
Good afternoon. Lauren Steinhauser on behalf of the company.
I like your new alternative three. It just makes sense to me to do it. I had to get pretty a little larger. Your numbers were a little too small for my eyes. But in the end, it looks like just the fuel true-up mechanism that you would charge ratepayers, so they would be charged less in 1 month, which would be April, and it looks like it's approximately about 60%, but I'm just kind of ballparking it less on that particular factor. Am I tracking?
Chair Stephen, Commissioner Tuma, I believe so, but I'm going to call up the expert here.
Don't have attorneys talk math, or accounting, that's right.
Ms. Peterson, please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Lisa Peterson with Xcel Energy. Chair Sieben, Commissioner Tuma, you're correct. Your read of our rate change under alternate decision options 3 is appropriate or accurate.
So give me a general understanding in the ballpark. If I'm a residential ratepayer paying the average residential, what are we talking about that it's going to be, and I would assume pretty much noticeable, but just give me a ballpark of what the actual bill difference would be.
Sure. Under alternate decision option 3, refunding the Sherco $48 million in the month of April would be a reduction of about $12 on an average residential bill.
Average residential, correct me, what is the average residential bill?
It's roughly $95 on overall for the year. I don't know what it is exactly for April,
about
but
15%.
Yes.
In that ballpark, it's going to drop for April.
Yes.
So it's not going to be they're not going to be whipsawed and have people freaking out when they get their May bill all of a sudden. Well, how did this get so much higher?
Correct.
And then, Ms. Peterson, that was helpful. I was looking at the rate just for April was filed in your petition too. So, and I get that it's like a adjustment. It's an adjustment, but it also will be based on people's usage. So then if it doesn't come out perfectly, then does it kind of transfer into the next month too, or does it get trued up at the end of the year in the fuel clause docket?
That's a good question. With no other action, but putting these rates into place as we put forth in this week's filing, the difference would get trued up at the end of the year, probably when we file our true up next year. One of the decision alternatives is the compliance report after we were to make the refund. If we are in a over or under recovery position on that month's refund, we could offer to put the difference in 1 month, for example. In that compliance filing, we could propose that and show you what that would look like.
But in your alternative decision option 3, which was kind of the direction I was thinking it would go, then customers would get roughly the $48 million. It's based on usage, and so then it would be trued up at the end of the year, more or less. Otherwise, you're saying we could say you should fix it and then like iron out the difference in May.
That's correct.
What's easier for the company? Because I think either way, it's like we're talking about a little amount of money that will.
I think how we would like to approach it is we would take a look at what actually happened for the refund month, and if we felt like that was a significant or material amount of difference, we would propose to change a rate. So we'd have the rate in place in April. We'd be getting actuals in May. We'd maybe file our I haven't worked out the timing here, but we'll file our compliance in June sometime. If we felt like there was a material difference, we could offer to change the rate August 1st or September 1st just for 1 month to take care of the difference. If it feels like it's not significant, then I think we'd prefer to roll it over into just the normal true-up process.
And that, I don't know, sounds like it works for me. And what, if that was the direction we went, what decision options would that be then? Just your alternative 1, alternative 3, and 4?
That's correct.
And Ms. Campbell, does that, I understand why you had a different, I don't want to speak for you. Would that work for the department if we did 1, 3, alternative 3 and 4, with the understanding that most of the money is going back to customers in April, and then figure out how the rest
Yes, I think that's a reasonable conclusion.
works for you from your take too, from your perspective?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, I would propose that we do that we move decision option 1, Xcel's alternative decision option 3, which, just to be clear, is refunding to customers the $48 million inclusive of interest, as it says, and then the compliance decision option in 4. Any discussion? All in favor of my motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion prevails. Thank you, everybody. There's no other business before us, so we're adjourned for the day.